Good evening. My comadre Roxanne is here. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Doing good. A little tired, getting worn down during election time, but I
Yeah,
think this is an important conversation that we're going to have. So,
so much happening. I mean, it's a constant drag, actually. I mean, it's just been so negative. I mean, all over, not just with the presidential, but,
right.
with even our local races. I know here in the Inland Empire, and I know that you guys are going through it. Oh, by
Yeah,
the way,
I was getting into it with somebody on Twitter today,
yeah.
just with misinformation
Oh,
and
I
things
don't
like
know. It's
that.
like it's not. There's no happy medium. It's like you either,
No.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well,
And
well,
campaigns and elections are already tiring and hard enough, but right now it's just heightened and it's just even more so.
exactly. And once again, California has a whole bunch of ballot measures, propositions on the ballot that just spring up, and it's so hard to understand them sometimes because they're purposely written in a way to sort of deceive the voter. You can't just glance at it. You have to really read through it and study it and see, if it's something that you want to support or oppose. Because I mean, let's face it, we've seen I know I've actually accidentally voted the wrong way before on an issue with that. I thought I was voting for, and ended up voting against, or vice versa. So that's not fun.
That actually happened quite a bit, I would say, last year and the year before. I know we're going to talk about it, and there's another rent control proposition on the ballot. And there were people who literally were walking into the polls thinking they were voting for it and they were voting against it, just because of the wording. And you have to look at the amount of money that's being spent against on the yes or the no campaign, and
Yeah,
who is that money coming from, right? Follow the money. Yeah.
right. I would say the top
It
tip.
takes research and
Yes.
time.
And
Yeah.
not even really, because we have the internet now. Everyone has Google on their phone. That's the beauty of now. But I would say that the top two of the top tips I have for reviewing propositions, one is check out who's supporting it and who's not. Because sometimes that can be very telling.
Yes. Yes.
Obviously reading through it is that's for sure. But
Mm-hmm.
the second thing is who's paying for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's how we know, like, who's sponsoring this, who wants this, and why.
Yeah, I actually have a handy little chart that we can share with people. There's a fellow delegate of mine in the Democratic Party who put together a chart on all of the propositions with the money that's being spent on both sides and how much, and it's very, very helpful.
Is that a link that we can put up, or?
It's a picture. It's like a PDF. I could think I can share it in the comments
Okay, perfect.
on Facebook. Yeah, yeah. So
Okay,
just
yeah,
to
let's do
mention
that.
that.
And remind you that, like, what we're going to talk about tonight is mostly just giving you information on what the propositions are. And, we'll tell you how we voted on it. There's a couple that La Pomada definitely supports, but, it's really up to you. You
Mhm.
decide, you go from what we tell you, and then you can look up on your own and see, what's good for you, how you feel about it. We're not telling you, some of you are Democrats, some of you are not. So your parties have suggestions as well. So we're just
Yeah,
trying to give you some more information.
yeah. A little bit more context. Yeah.
Now we are going to deep dive into a few of these. Roxanne, which are the deep dive ones?
So definitely Prop 15, which is the big education funding proposition on the ballot. And then there's Proposition 16, which is affirmative action.
Mhm.
And then we should have somebody coming on to also talk with us about Proposition 21, which is rent control.
Perfect. So I'm basically just going to go through the other ones with a quick, like, 1 minute blurb on each one, just so we know what they are, and we can, you can decide for yourself. So the first one is scrolling through the screen. So there are 11, just so everyone knows, there are 11. And the first one is Proposition 14. And Proposition 14 really is just reissuing bonds and money for stem cell research to continue. As you know, California has a lot of the premier medical universities in California, actually across the country. And we do a lot of research. UCLA, UC Berkeley, Stanford is, a high graded medical university. And so they do a lot of research. And for the research, they need funding. And we have authorized funding in the past. And as a person who has an autoimmune and a nervous system disorder, I have MS, and I know there's people in my family that have Alzheimer's, and there's people in everybody's family that have cancer of some kind. Stem cell research is super important. And I personally think that we should support this research, and whatever gains come from grant funding that any of these medical researchers get, the state will get back that money. So it's a win-win. And if we can find a cure for Alzheimer's, especially, or MS, that would be fabulous. But that's what Prop 14 is, stem cell research. Okay. So, and if you have questions on any of the propositions or anything we talk about, feel free to put them in the comments and we'll try to address what we can. All right, so we're going to go hard on this one. So we're going to put this one off. This is the Money for Schools and Cities, Prop 15. And the next one is Prop 16. And which
skipping that one too.
I'm going to skip that one. And Prop 17. So Prop 17 is basically the right for people who have been incarcerated over a felony. When they are released from prison, currently they have to wait until they are off of parole to reinstate their voting rights. This just brings it to when they are released from prison, which I believe, and is how you feel, but I believe that a person has served their time, they have, done that, and they should be restored their voting rights immediately, because a lot of these laws affect them and their parole status and their future status. So I'm going to say a yes on Prop 17, and we'll put the yeses and nos up, but that's
I think all of the civil rights nonprofits and criminal justice nonprofits are all supporting this as well, just as a note.
Okay. So the next one is Proposition 18. And Proposition 18 will allow a 17-year-old, a teenager who's going to be 17 by the time of the primary to register. Currently, it's 17 by the time of the general election. So this just bumps it up so that they can vote in the primary election for their chosen candidate. So it just pumps it up a few months. I'm voting yes on this. I think it's good. Look, I know that some people are 17-year-olds are not responsible enough to vote, but I personally have a 17-year-old that I signed for to go to the Navy. And I felt like if my baby is old enough to die for this country, then my baby should have been old enough to vote as well. So
absolutely.
That's me. I'm just saying.
Yeah. And, a lot of people like to say that the younger generation is not voting, but if we want to encourage that and support that for those who do, allowing them to at least register younger is only going to help motivate them.
Exactly. I seem to have skipped Prop 19. So let me see what
Okay. That is I have a friend who's working on that campaign, and that's the fire protection, I believe.
Yes. This is important, people, because this one, and I'm going to scroll it for you. So Prop 19 includes 55 years old and over, people who have a residence that they claim, let's say for the fire example, when they claim that main residence and they have to stay in another residence while their house is being rebuilt or redone because they've been in a fire, currently they have to still continue to pay that tax. So this actually just helps alleviate that. I'm going to say yes on this. I think it's a good thing, especially for our seniors. So there's that.
I don't have all the details, but just a friend who's been working on that campaign and is really passionate about it and supporting it, and to be able to help those folks more than what they're getting right now.
You guys can read all about these also in the big
voter guide. Mm-hmm.
And I actually went through mine, and one of the things that they put in here is they tell you who helped write the rebuttal, the for and against. And so that's always good information to have. I studied mine. So So let's talk about Prop 20. So Prop 20 is really tricky because it acts like it's a hard on crime thing, but really it's just making it it's just creating a hazard. So yeah, I voted no on it because it limits access to parole programs, and one of the things that we need to be better as a state is we need to be able to provide people who are paroled an opportunity to actually succeed. So I'm going to vote no on this because it gives too many restrictions, and you guys can read through it. I know that one of the people who I was impressed by one of the people who supported it. I can't find it now, but anyway, I'm voting no on that. So you guys decide on that one. Rent control 21. We're going to skip that one. 22. So 22 is I know that most of my people are voting. A lot of my friends and people that I know and respect are voting no on this proposition. However, I'm going to vote yes on this proposition. What this proposition is, this is for app drivers such as Uber and Lyft and Instacart. It makes them employees of these companies rather than contract workers. And the reason it's important, there's a couple different reasons. One, a lot of these people that are working in these side jobs and side gigs, they're called gig workers. They do it for extra money. I know a lot of teachers who drive as a side gig to make extra money because maybe their kids are going through college or they're single parents and they want to put money into their classroom. And as a teacher, it's written into your contract that you cannot moonlight. And so an unintended consequence of making this an actual employer versus a contract job is that it would not allow a lot of teachers and other people who have these kinds of prohibitions in their contracts to not be able to make this extra money. And the second really big important reason for me is that California has a huge problem with housing and food insecurity for our college students. We get them to college, we get them there, they're at the university, they're studying, but they have no food and they have no place to live. A lot of kids depend on these gig jobs to eat and to have a place to live so they can continue in school. So I'm going to vote yes on this because I think that we should continue to support those people that want to make this extra kind of money.
I've seen different things on this, of course. This is one that I've seen some different responses on. I was a gig worker for quite a bit of 2017 and 2018, just going through some transitions, and was able to still do a lot of my volunteer work as a mom, doing things in the district and drive for Lyft in the evenings and on the weekends. And it's such a great freedom to be able to have, for anybody to be able to have, whether you're a single mom like me, or you're a college student or a teacher that needs to supplement their income. So I would say definitely do some research on this one, but we're just trying to give you something to work from.
Yeah. One other thing that I would say is that they are adding some protections for workers, such as they're going to have a living wage, and they're also going to have health insurance provided to these workers. If they become employees, obviously they would have those protections. They would be able to join a union. However, you still have, California has labor laws, so there would still be some protection. So anyway,
is there anything, I'm just curious, is there anything in there about wear and tear on the person's car as an employee, any kind of writing that off for taxes or anything like that as far as advantages?
Well, no, but I know that you can write it off in your taxes as part of your employment because it becomes your office, your mobile office.
Yeah. Just curious if there were anything else additional, because that is the one significant thing that made me think, oh, I could not do this full time. I only did it, very, very casually and on the weekends and evenings here and there. Did not drive a lot of hours. Is that wear and tear could definitely add up. Definitely.
The irony of this particular thing happening right now is that we have a lot of moms that can't work, so they have to stay home with their kids and teach them, or help them homeschool.
Distance learning, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them are doing gig work. So Instacart shoppers are like,
So
yes,
exactly. Very true. Yes.
Okay, so the next one is Prop 23. And so Prop 23 is requiring doctors to be on site at every dialysis center in California. So if you know anybody that has kidney or renal failure and issues with their kidneys or waiting for a kidney transplant or something, then you know that dialysis usually happens every day, or it could be up every day. It could be, you know, once, twice, three times a week. But in rural areas, it's very difficult sometimes to get to dialysis. And having to have a doctor at each site would only make that worse and harder for people to have access. Now, I have Kaiser. So if I was to have dialysis, I would be followed by my regular doctor, and I wouldn't need to have an extra doctor on site at the dialysis center. I just need a nurse practitioner to hook me up and switch my blood out so that I can live. So I'm going to say no to this because I feel like people might actually die if they're not able to access dialysis and they don't have a kidney transplant rate waiting. So this is really important. I don't know. I'm going to vote no on this. I don't know if you have something on this night.
No, this is just another one, I would say, like 22, where I've seen so many different things on this as far as ads, dialysis patients saying that they support it, some saying that they don't. So this is one I was a little bit confused on and not clear on. And I'm glad I'm hearing the information you're giving, because this is one that I still need to figure out which way I want to decide. But it's helpful, and I can do a little bit more research.
Yes, do a little bit more research, but, you know, keep in mind that there are thousands and thousands of people that get dialysis all the time, and we live in high, you know, areas where there's a lot of dialysis centers. There are people up in the north part that really travel hours to go get dialysis every single day. So if they close these centers, it would just be all bad.
My sister has a friend, and he is actually very young, in his 20s, and he is on dialysis. And, you know, another thing that's interesting about the dialysis propositions is there's a lot of them. I remember 2 years ago, there was another one. And it was really hard to figure out which way to go. A lot of misinformation. Actually, I know a woman who works for SCIU and was always advocating for dialysis patients and was kind of giving me some of that information. So it's something that I think that we've been seeing come on the ballot a few times, and we just have to, you know, find out a little bit more, I think, and pay attention to it, because even if it doesn't pass this time, it seems like another one will pop up, right? That's what I've been seeing anyway. So that's the only thing I could add to that.
All right. So the next one is Proposition 24. Consumer privacy. And this one is one of those tricky ones. And honestly, this is funny because you guys are going to laugh, but I'm going to tell you that a lot of the reason why I decided to vote no on this is because Dolores Huerta saying no. So I'm like, okay, Dolores said no, let me find out why. But then I found out why. And you know what? It creates a whole division, a whole department of computer internet privacy. And it also has a scheme to charge you to keep your internet private. And so this is one of those ones that has that tricky language in there that is trying to be something that it's really not. So I'm voting no on it. You guys can do your research, but I'm voting no on it, mostly because the agency that will be created will be an annual cost of about $25 million. And God knows we don't need more bureaucracy, and especially around my internet.
Exactly.
Keep
something simple.
All right. So that was 24. The next one is the last one, Prop 25, money bail. So this is something that we've been hearing a lot about over the last couple of years. And this is whether or not we want to replace the money bail system with a system that is more thoughtful, where you actually have judges making discretionary decisions. And I'm voting yes on this because I think that if anybody have watched the, you know, Netflix Khalif Broder story, or if you know anyone who's ever been wrongfully arrested, and then they can't make bail because they don't have the money and they were never even guilty. Dude, you really like no, like it's just so unfair. And then even if you do make bail, you never get it back. So I mean, I think it's time to change our system. This will start to address some of those inequities in the system because right now it is institutionally racist. And this is, poor people. It affects poor people in such a way that they stay in prison. Whereas if you're someone who's affluent, you can, get out of jail and then go to court. And I would be okay with putting some kind of a, monitoring system on someone but I mean, you can kind of see who's going to be a flight risk and not. And this is not for people who are like committing murder or anything like that. This is just, for lesser offenses. So I would say yes to changing our money bail system. And that was Prop 25. All right. Any input, Roxanne?
No, not on that last particular one. I did want to update you. Unfortunately, my friend who I thought was going to come and be able to talk about Prop 21 ended up having something come up, and he's currently driving, can't join us, but I'll share as much as I can. And then maybe tomorrow night, if we're still doing the Spanish broadcast on this, he can join then. So I'll follow up and find out.
That brings us, if you have any question on any of the propositions that we've talked about so far, put it in the comments and we'll try to address it. But that's where we stand on those. Now we're going to deep dive into the other propositions that we skipped over. So what do you want to start with, Ms. Roxanne?
We can start with Prop 15.
Okay. So Prop 15 is money for schools and cities. It's not just for schools. So let's have Roxanne just summarize what Prop 15 is.
Yeah, so Prop 15 is also known as Schools and Communities First. And what this does is this closes a loophole that allows corporate landowners to avoid paying current property tax rates. Sorry, it basically repeals Prop 13, and I believe it holds the property tax at the rate of 1978. So while homeowners have to pay current property tax rates on this time, 2020, large corporations do not. For example, let's say Disneyland, who has had their property in Anaheim for decades, as we know, is not paying current rates. And there's a lot of misconceptions out there, which we can go over in just a moment. So what that does is it reclaims that money, and 40% of that money goes to schools, public schools in your community, and the remaining 60% goes to other things in your community, like hospitals, fire stations, things like that, other resources that your community might need. So we can get into some other weeds of it, but that's just the overall basis.
Yeah. So this proposition is really, I have been waiting for this as a former teacher and as someone who's been in education for almost 25 years. Let me tell you, we've been waiting for this since it happened. So this is actually addressing some of the issues created by Prop 13, where big industries or big it's not small businesses. There's a threshold, isn't there?
Yeah, it's 3 million. It's businesses worth 3 million.
There's a threshold. It's not going to affect small businesses, but the property taxes that have not been paid by everyone fairly throughout the state has really caused for our cities and our schools to decline because we don't have enough revenue, and it's very limited in what we can do to create revenue to support our schools and our municipalities. So this is super important. We need this. This has to pass. I know in my community, if we don't get Prop 15, we're not going to be okay.
And I think that's also why people probably have seen so many teachers that maybe they know that have been so enthusiastic about this, right? So, teachers and the teachers associations are the ones who have been focused on this, and collecting signatures last year, and making sure that this happens, is because they understand exactly how it's going to impact their profession. And like you said, they've been waiting for a long time. We've all heard stories about schools, or maybe some of us haven't, schools that can't afford toilet paper.
Yeah.
Parents are fundraising for toilet paper, and depending on where you live and how affluent that community is, you might have parents that can fundraise quite a bit for your school, right? I hear about schools that raise like $500,000. Not where I live. Parents are not able to donate directly to the school. They can fundraise and help raise money, but they're not making thousands of dollar donations like you have at other schools. So the schools in the low income communities, I think, everybody would benefit from this, but the schools in low income communities, I think, really would. And this also does include charter schools as well. So as public schools, they are part of that. I think that's important to mention, because there have been times where other policies have specifically tried to leave charter schools out.
Right.
But this does not. And I'm actually going to share a link to a document that you can take a look at. Actually, you can go to the website on the Yes on 15 website, which I'll drop in there as well. And you can look up by county how much money your county is supposed to get, and then actually go look at your child's school and see how much money your child's school is estimated to get. So you can really see some of those numbers in blanket.
Website?
What's that?
What's the name of that website?
Let me double check. I was trying to pull up a sheet that I have with everything on it, and of course it's not pulling up. It is yes15.org. Yes15.org.
Yes. Put it up here so you guys can have that.
Perfect.
And,
I'm going to try to find the other links that I have as well. That for some
on that website, you can put in your neighborhood or your city, and you'll see how much funding that you're going to get. Now, I know that, everybody's like, oh, I don't want to pay more taxes. It's not going to affect property owners. If you are in a property, you're already paying the taxes. So you're okay. This is for big businesses who haven't been able, or who haven't been mandated to pay at the same rate, because Prop 13 cut them from doing that. And I would just tell you that if you look at your handy California voter guide on this proposition, the main person who is writing the argument in favor of Proposition 15 is California Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond. He's the first person you see on here. And so that's because our schools need it. And then Jacqueline Martinez from Latino Community Foundation, because as you know, there's so many Latino, Black and brown kids in our schools, and they need this. We need this for our kids, because right now our schools are just, so the infrastructure is failing, everything's falling apart. We really do need the money to make sure that our schools can continue to get what they need for our kids. And with the Prop 13 people, Harvard Jarvis and all them, they're against it.
I think it would be good to go through some of those myths that are currently being said. You kind of started to touch on them, and that's the part that you'll even see commercials that say that this is going to impact homeowners. These are commercials that are there to create fear, to scare us, and so homeowners are protected. Small businesses are protected. Again, you have to be worth $3 million or more, and agricultural farms are also protected as well. And so you're looking at your large corporations starting to pay their fair share.
Let me read to you what these people have put on the argument against Prop 15, just so you hear the language. Proposition 15 destroys jobs and small businesses. 7 million Californians work for small businesses. Millions of Californians are filing for unemployment and are at risk of losing everything. Nothing on Prop 15 stops the tax from losing everything. So here's the deal. This is just language that is just in there for no reason at all. Has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Small businesses are not affected. If you lease a building, or if you own a small building, you're not really going to be affected. You're already paying the taxes. It's people who own like these big warehouses that are going up everywhere, Amazon, all these people. those are the people that are going to be paying the higher tax rate. So
Well, and actually, small businesses are going to get a tax break because they're the ones who have been carrying the burden for the lack of taxes that the larger businesses have not been paying. And so they're actually going to also now get a break from what they've been paying. So this helps small businesses, but these are, the different tactics and wording that is used to confuse us.
yeah, totally. And you can see it in the language, that the way they wrote it, it's just like scare, scare, scare.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so of course, La Comadre fully endorses and hopes and wants you to vote yes on Prop 15. It's very important for our kids. And, so we definitely want you to vote on that one. So that's a big yes. All right. Is there anything else on Prop 15?
I think you covered it. I'm just still trying to find that paper I had with all my links and stuff. I'm just going to drop some more information in the comments, but no, I think we covered it all. Yeah.
All right. So now let's move on to Proposition 16. And Proposition 16 repeals Proposition 209 from 19. When did that pass?
It was
96.
1996. Yes, it was mid 90s. Mm-hmm.
So in 1996, the voters of California, in their infinite wisdom, and mind you, the voters of California looked way different in 1996, but they said, we don't need affirmative action because everybody gets treated fairly. Fast forward to 2020. I'm sorry, y'all, but everybody does not get treated fairly. And so we are forced to put this on the ballot and have a conversation all over again about how systemic racism is still affecting people when they're trying to get jobs, when they're trying to get contracts with state government or city, when they're trying to get into school. So this is a proposition that will repeal affirmative action, the loss of affirmative action. So Roxanne's going to tell you more about that.
I think you explained that well. Yeah, I mean, this is something that would apply if we lived in a world where we could absolutely confirm that there was no racism. But I don't think we can do that. I know that we can't do that. I know some people might think that is not true. And so there's some really good examples that I would like to give that really just kind of, I think, give you some clear examples of how this is going to help. So this is not just about race, it's also about gender. So this is something that would really impact women of all races, but most of the impact would definitely be felt by women of color, especially when it comes to what they make compared to men. Right. So let's say, as far as education goes, one big myth that we need to debunk and address right now is that Proposition 16 has quotas. There are no quotas. And this is something that was really used back in the 90s to create this stigma towards affirmative action. I remember even being like, my daughter's age now, 12, 13, 14, and thinking that affirmative action was like a bad thing because of all of the messages that were going on at that time. And so it was like this, that there was a quota that a certain number of students would have to be able to get into a college. So X number of Black students, X number of Latino students or Asian students had to be admitted, even if they weren't really qualified. That is not the case now. There are no quotas with Prop 16. So if somebody tells you that, I can tell you right now that that is not true. And you can tell them right off the bat, people can vote how they want, but please understand that that part is not true. So there are no particular quotas that need to be filled. That's actually, the Supreme Court voted on that and said that that is not allowed. So well, the example that I would like to give is, let's say that there are two students who go to apply to go to college, right? And on paper, these two applicants look exactly the same. Their grades are the same, their volunteer work, their internships, all those extracurricular things that you need to do to apply to college and get in, everything on paper looks the same. But one student is a white man and the other student is a Black man. And typically right now, without affirmative action, you are not allowed to look at race. You're not allowed to use it as something that you consider to make your decision between these two students who really look the same on paper, right? Now, if we repeal it, the school can look at it and look at their demographics and say, okay, how many students do we have that fit this demographic already of white male students, right? Oh, we have 80%. Well, maybe we should look at this student and diversify, because we have a very low percentage of African American students, and this student is absolutely qualified to get into this school, right? Then they can extend that opportunity to that student of color rather than the white student, at that particular college. Doesn't mean that that white student isn't going to get into college, but maybe in that particular situation, we do take a look at race or gender. Let's say that it's a white male student again, and then you have a female Latina student. So you could look at race and you could look at gender and say, you know what, we don't have a lot of female Latina students at this school, and this person meets our qualifications. We can admit her. We need to diversify our student population. So those are just some examples that I could give.
Yes, absolutely. And and again, you guys, like, I wasn't sure about this, and I was like, ooh, 16, I don't know, because I listened to somebody speak on it, and they actually confused me more. I wasn't sure if I was going to vote yes to repeal or no to repeal. I wasn't sure which one. So it wasn't until I went to my guide and I saw this, and I put a star next to it. So
I couldn't see it. What did it say?
It's the argument in favor. I'm going to tell you. The argument in favor is Thomas Saenz, the president of Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund. And I love, love, love that organization. And I trust Tom implicitly. And if he says, vote yes for this, for our kids and for our communities, then I'm voting yes for it. So it's MALDEF approved. And yeah, it's such a great organization. So, I mean, that's just like, because you look for organizations that that you support wholeheartedly. If they're on the proposition talking about, I need you to vote for this, I'm there. That was
there's also a couple assembly members that have been working on this very passionately, and that would be Assemblywoman Shirley Weber. Down in San Diego. She has been a big champion on this, as well as Assembly Member Miguel Santiago here in Los Angeles. I heard him speak at an event, and he was so passionate about this and just really understanding about how this has impacted families like his and families like ours, and how, and the other thing that's important to mention is we are only one of 8 states that doesn't have affirmative action. Right? California, so progressive. Oh, come on. Yeah. We don't have, there's a lot of things we don't have that other states do when we should be leading the way, right? So we're one of 8 states that does not have affirmative action.
And again, this is because in 1996, it was a very, it was a very different time then. The state looked different. The demographics were different. And it was like very anti.
This is not long after Rodney King. A lot of those racial,
187.
Yes.
And all that.
Yes. Actually, he was governor back then, mid 90s, because I remember when I was in high school, he was the governor. It was a different time. And we're basically, we've been suffering for this for the last 25 years. Our families and friends and people that we know, just women in general, are not getting the same opportunities. So this would help us start to even the playing field for everybody, and not just the people who already have advantages.
Yeah. So the way La Comadre sees it, we are a big yes on this one. We are definitely endorsing and supporting Proposition 16. We want you to vote yes on Prop 16 to repeal Prop 209. All right. So that leaves us with, actually, we're getting through this really in record time. This is good.
Yeah. We might finish a little bit early.
We're like, oh, do we go through all of them? Yeah, sure, why not?
You did it fast. And without the translation, it goes faster as well, of course, since we're doing another night.
We're going to do a Spanish version of this tomorrow with Alma and some of the comadres. So they'll be on here tomorrow doing this whole talk in Spanish. So the last proposition that we're going to talk about is Prop 21. And Comadre Roxanne's going to lay it out.
Yes. So Prop 21 is rent control, and I have to say there are a lot of people that are divided on this. Um, if you look at who is supporting it, you have support from a lot of Democratic elected officials. The California Democratic Party has also endorsed this, but unfortunately, Gavin Newsom has not. And there are some skeptical reasons as to why I won't get into, just because we want to stick with the facts. But there are some reasons that people believe that he may not be supporting this that are not necessarily just about, that have more to do with politics than the actual proposition itself. And so a couple, I think some people are familiar with Costa-Hawkins, which basically says that rent control can only be applied to buildings that were built 1978. I don't know what it is with that year, and anything before. And anything after 1978 cannot have rent control, right? And so what this does is it actually gives the control to the local cities to decide. This is not something that's going to come from above, from Sacramento, that's going to say you have to put this blanket, rent control across the state. This is meant for local communities and cities to decide whether they feel what is right and what guidelines they want to apply for rent control. But I believe now you would be able to include buildings built from 2005 and before. That's a pretty big difference, right? And the bottom line is, if we don't have any type of control in place, our rents have just continued to go up. And they're not stopping. And if incomes are not increasing, how are we ever supposed to catch up with that? I think this is long overdue, in my opinion. As somebody who is a single mother, and who, if was going to have an apartment or any type of rental was something that I was doing 100% by myself, it's just almost impossible. It really is. And so thankfully, I have a supportive family, and my mom was able to go to college and get an education and afford a place to live. And a lot of families live together, right? You have multi-generations. And that's the type of family that I come from. But I just remember always in my 20s, like wanting to move to different areas, and I could never really afford to. I really couldn't. And then becoming a single mother was almost impossible. So if I didn't have a family that could help support me, where would I be? So what about all those other folks out there? And then not even to mention, this got on the ballot and was something that was important before COVID, right? So now post COVID, oh my gosh, we're going to need, even more help trying to keep people in their homes. And again, when we talk about endorsements, one thing I think that's really important to point out is, again, when we look at who's supporting and who's not. And I noticed that a lot of the tenants unions are supporting this proposition. And the tenants unions are the people that you go to when you're being evicted from your apartment. When you're being evicted, and a lot of the time it is not legally, they're doing it in some kind of illegal way, and you have no idea, right? You're just being told that you have to leave. And unless you're really clear on your rights, you may be really lost. And so a lot of those folks will go to tenant unions that will help them advocate, help them organize, contact elected officials to try to keep people in their homes. And you'll see a lot of those endorsements. And you'll see an endorsement from me on this proposition too, actually, if you go to their website, as a Democratic Party delegate, supporting this proposition as well.
Because we have very important comadres, right? So,
working to do my part.
point out, and again, this user guide can come in handy.
Yes.
So for me, it's the fact that Kevin De Leon and Dolores Huerta
Yes.
are supporting this. That's enough said for me. But then if I want to look at the facts, there's a couple of things in here that we should mention. One is that this will protect single family homeowners. Prop 21 exempts single family homeowners. If you are not in the rental home business, you will not be affected by Prop 21. And also that it brings stability to seniors and veterans, because as you know, seniors and veterans are on fixed incomes, and they can't afford, if someone raises the rent $500, they're not going to be able to afford that. They are always they catch a lot of they're a big part of the folks that get evicted and have issues with housing. And that's why you see so many veterans in the street. because of these in ridiculous housing costs. It guarantees landlords a profit, and you have a broad coalition of people supporting this. But I think this is a good thing. California has to do something. And I know I live in in one of the poorest communities in California, San Bernardino, and you cannot get. I mean, you for like $1,000, you get a single, not a single. What do they call studio? A studio apartment with like just run down, terrible. How and you have 2-3 families living in these sometimes, and it's just ridiculous. Our median income in San Bernardino is like 32,000, and that's actually kind of conservative. But people can't afford. And remember that guy a while back when he's all, the rent is too damn high. Remember
That's these people. Actually, the people who put this on the ballot are those same folks. The rent is too damn high. Yeah. You know what? Another thing they like to say.
San Francisco.
Yeah, another thing they like to say, which is so spot on, is when the rents go up, tents go up. And that's the truth. That's the truth. And we all feel bad and we all see homeless and stuff, but I think this is a really proactive way to actually do something to really support our people who are vulnerable to losing their homes.
Decent. And rent control is definitely something that the state has been needing for a minute. And we are definitely endorsing and supporting this proposition as well. Please, please, please vote yes on Prop 21 for rent control in California. And guess what? That concludes our prop talk.
I like that. That was good.
We are done. So there's no questions in the comments unless you have somebody.
I'm just going to keep dropping some links in. These were links that I shared on the conversation that we had on Saturday briefly about proposition. So I'm just going to keep dropping a few links in. And if you guys are on tomorrow night in Spanish, I will try to come on and do the same. And just try to give people some more resources that they can go take a look at.
Okay, perfect. So remember, the important thing is to, don't take our word for it. Do your own research. There's plenty of resources where you can go. There's, I think, League of Women Voters does of thing, and they're usually pretty
bipartisan. They're bipartisan.
Bipartisan. They just kind of give you the facts. And then there's the California Voter Guide, which gives you both sides. It gives you both sides. Like, this is the people for it. These are the people against it. And decide. But if you don't have time to read up on everything, look at that handy dandy chart that Roxanne has placed in the comments, and that will kind of give you a guide. And is that from the Democratic Party, or is that from?
It's not from any particular organization. It's from an individual, but this person is a delegate in the Democratic Party.
Okay, so there's lots of places you can go for information. The important thing is that you go vote, and you vote early, hopefully as soon as possible. If you haven't already done so, I've already voted. I already got my notification from the registrar that my ballot is there and ready to be counted. So when that number pops up at 8:15 p.m. on election night, I'm going to be one of those voters.
Nice. I have not voted yet, but this was really helpful actually for me for a couple of propositions that I was not aware of, or I just wasn't sure what the details were that you shared. So I appreciate that, and hoping to get my ballot out soon as well.
All right. So, okay, don't forget, tomorrow night, we're going to have this same conversation on all of these propositions in Spanish, mañana en español, para todas las personas que necesitan información sobre las proposiciones en español. And my Spanish is on point tonight. What? All right. This is what happens when you drink a cerveza before you go on.
I was thinking that. I wasn't going to say it, but I was thinking that. I wonder if it was that Corona that helped.
I'm all Mexicana.
You're on fire tonight.
Taking time to listen to this and spread the word. If anyone needs information, shoot them this video. Let them know this is how La Comadre thinks. Appreciate Roxanne coming on and letting us know about all the big big time propositions. And don't forget, tomorrow we'll see you then. And we'll see you on Saturday, 10 a.m. at our regularly scheduled La Comadre in the morning on Saturday morning. All right? Until then, take care. Stay safe. Good night.